All right, that's a big idea. Okay, I'm going to blaze through. We got a few more things to talk about, and I'm going to encourage you to press F12 on Blazor server-side applications when loading big lists, so that you can see how the DOM interacts. But there is there's something that causes a page to hang or seem to hang and sit there when it's loading, say, 100 images in a list of, not grids, but a list of things, because the DOM is doing kind of 100 DOM transactions. You can get around this in Blazor, and actually, I think this applies to either version of Blazor because you're still using the DOM. It doesn't apply to Blazor native applications because you're actually not doing DOM interop. But if you take the first 10 of a long list and bind it or set it to the variable that a loop is bound to, and then call state has changed, that'll do a 10-item transaction in the browser DOM, and the user will see something really quickly. Then behind the scenes, put the other 100 behind it and call state has changed again, and it'll append to the end of the list. If you don't do this, the browser won't show you anything until all 100 of those items are bound into the DOM. And so that'll be a noticeable lag. You say, man, why is this screen so slow? So that's just a little tip. And you can test this, you don't believe me. I talked about broadcasted events. This is something, this code actually hangs off of the bus and takes broadcastable events, objects that represent or implement a particular interface, a marker interface, and send them through SignalR. Okay, so that's another cross-cutting concern example. I also want to show you how unit tests look for Blazor components. This is server-side or WebAssembly. You want to use the bunit library, layer it on top of InUnit for running tests, and you can literally create a single Blazor component. You can set its parameters, you can stub out its dependencies, you can run it, and then you can make sure that certain HTML elements were created and are visible and have the right data in them. And this is what that looks like. Now, when you deploy to a TDD environment, a test automation environment at the start of your automated deployment pipeline, you want to run full system acceptance tests through the browser. And so you want to use Selenium for that. Playwright is a new library that Microsoft is playing with. It's early, but Selenium has been around for a long time, well over 10 years. And that is right today, as I speak, that is the library you want to use for full system testing of Blazor. You'll be able to hook some of the events, but you're not going to get away from doing some thread.sleeps in some situations. That's what we found, unfortunately. So these tests are considerably slower, but you want to have full system acceptance tests that run completely through the browser on a deployed system. And so, this is kind of what those Selenium tests look like. You want to have every one of these full system acceptance tests responsible for their own setup. So you kind of use your data access layer, throw data into the database at the beginning of a test, and then have common navigation. Okay. So this is the setup, and then you have your act and assert, arrange, act, assert, and the asserts use the Selenium driver to do certain things. All right, let's finish up with monitoring, and I want to show you something really, really interesting that happens when you use a hub and spoke pattern, and that is to pull interesting telemetry like this. So this is kind of an older slide. You can see by the dates, but when you take every command, query, and event that goes through that hub, that bus pattern, and you send them all to Application Insights or Datadog or Splunk, now you have names of custom events, and now you can graph them, you can chart them over time, and you can count them up and start to derive some metrics. So we can see that we have this by the way is from the car auction application. We have weekly seasonality, but over the course of the summer from July through August time period, there was a steep ramp up in these types of messages running through the system. So that's really interesting. I will also share some in production You do want to be using the P3 instances. P3 instances came out in November, and I interviewed Stefan Shakow, one of the architects on App Service for the Azure DevOps podcast, and he recommended for any Blazor server-side applications that use a little bit more memory, P1 V3 is the smallest server size that they would recommend for Blazor server-side applications. And then P3 V3, man, that is a beast of a server right there. Okay,